So what does Trump's second administration hold for Nigeria, for Africa, and the rest of the world? With me here in the studio is Ambassador Joe Keshi, who is a former Consul-General of Nigeria in Atlanta, Georgia. And also joining us will be Professor Jideofor Adibe of the Department of Political Science and International Relations, Nasarawa State University. Ambassador, good evening and thanks for joining us.
Good evening and thanks for having me.
And I just want to pose the question that I asked to our reporter in Washington about Donald Trump's administration and what it holds in general. What are your thoughts about it? What it holds for Africa and Nigeria?
Well, look, before I answer your question, because you asked that this was something about reflection. And I thought I'd do a little bit of that reflection by pointing out that I hope Nigerian authorities, particularly the security agencies, the media as well, that they watched a seamless transition of power. There was no ADCs, special assistants running all over the place, fighting for seats to sit behind their bosses. They are not supposed to be in the hall, but we have messed up our own but all I'm trying to point out is that I think we need to begin to understand that it's a global standard when you do some of these activities. With regards to your question, I think Adeswa said something that we have to sit back. We have to sit back and wait. Because in his first term, Trump practically, I can't remember when he appointed the second or the third man in the State Department who is in charge of African affairs. And I'm not too sure whether they've done that now. So we just have to wait and see, because throughout the campaign, it was only once. And that was about about a month and a half to the end of the campaign, that he remembered, he was talking of Haiti. And they remembered there's another African country called Congo. So when you see that happening, you certainly can be sure that he's not really interested in countries like ours. So we would have to wait and see. If he makes an overture to us, I'm sure that our leaders will be glad to, hobnob with him, will be glad to, meet with him and advance. Everybody will advance their national interests. But for now, we just have to wait and see, because, look, we are not the only one that it's doing that wait and see. The Europeans are also doing that wait and see to see exactly what, the Asians are waiting. So the whole world is just waiting to see exactly what, he has to say, maybe except the people in Panama, Canada, and other places that he has named that he wants to, annex.
That's a good point. Let's go over to our offsite studio where we have Professor Jideofor. And I just wanted you to just follow up from where Ambassador stopped on your reflection or what Donald Trump's second administration might mean for Nigeria, for Africa.
Well, thank you very much. The first point to make is that Trump is very unpredictable. The other angle to it is also a very transactional man. So once you offer him a deal, he cannot refuse. He will play ball. Don't forget that when the administration on the U.S. before him, his first term, when they refused to sell fighter jets to Nigeria to fight Boko Haram, it was Donald Trump, that approved the sale. And it is actually most of the presidents of the U.S., they never really, is usually towards the end of their tenure that they remember Africa. And they use it to kind of wash their conscience. But one thing that must be said of Donald Trump is that in 2018, he started what he called Prosper Africa, which was designed to bring American and African businesses together and give them opportunities. It's different from African Growth Opportunity Act, which was geared towards reducing tariffs. That was started by Bill Clinton in 2000. It was in 2003, sorry, in 2000, to reduce tariffs so that more of African goods will be able to get into the American markets. Prosper Africa was essentially geared towards deals. And right now on their website, they claim that they have been able to facilitate over 1,800 deals in Africa, and that 49 countries have benefited. So, it's one of those arrangements by American president that, has bipartisan support in the Congress. Let's see how it works out. Nobody can predict Donald Trump because, as I said, he's a very transactional man.
Definitely, nobody can. Trump sometimes is predictable. At the same time, he's not predictable. But in his inaugural speech, he emphasized peace through strength. He also criticized past administrations. He said they were focusing on foreign wars at the expense of American interests. How do you see this sort of reshaping America's role on the global stage, particularly some of its engagements in Africa?
Look, if you look at the whole speech, he says one thing, he contradicts the other. You cannot be talking of peace and be demanding the Panama Canal at this point in time. You cannot be talking of peace and inciting opposition against the United States in Canada. You cannot be talking of peace and talking of buying Greenland and things like that. Yes, there's no doubt that the world needs peace, and there's no doubt that that the world needs America to help ensure peace in a number of places. If he can do that, the world will be a better place. Nobody wants war to start with. Biden didn't just go to war. Biden did not inspire did not cause the war in Europe between the Russians and So we just have to wait and see exactly what, he wants to do. But as of today, he has reeled out a number of things that he's going to try and do. But when you look at the speech completely, he says one thing that contradicts another. So we just have to wait and see how he manages all what he has said and what he can achieve. Remember, a number of promises were made first time around. Not even half were achieved. So we just wait and see. But unlike the professor, I'm among those who believe that Trump is very predictable. You can predict exactly what he will do and what he will say. And that's why, as I listen to the beginning of the speech, I'll wait for presidential historians in America to tell us whether this speech will rank among the best inaugural address we've heard. But certainly, left to me, I can say certainly today that it will not be among the best we've heard.
Okay, Professor, just to bring you into this conversation, talking about President Trump's speech, and you just heard what the ambassador said. I wanted to talk about something specific that he talked about when he said, drill, baby, drill, basically declaring a national energy emergency, if you will put it that way. Some people say this is indicating a shift in the global energy markets. What does this mean for Nigeria and countries that are major oil producers?
Well, the whole idea of not drilling was partly premised on the arguments about climate change and the need to protect the environment. Trump has never been a fan. In fact, he has questioned the whole idea of climate change as pseudoscience. So when he says, drill, baby, drill, that's really in consonance with all he had said before. About whether Trump is predictable, let me just briefly disagree with my brother, Keshi. If you look at his position on TikTok and how he just changed, and the impression people got when Zelensky went to the US, when he said he was the greatest salesman in history, he gave the impression that he was going to, pull all the support America has been given to Ukraine. But after meeting with the German Chancellor, we started hearing another tune. They started to talk about his position being more nuanced. In fact, I wrote an article saying that it's not really going to take that kind of dramatic position on Ukraine because there are a number of factors to be taken into consideration. One of them, for example, is the fact that North Korean soldiers we are said to be fighting with Russians. This is one of historic American enemies. Iran was also linked to Russia. And then there is also what we call the Truman Doctrine. The Truman Doctrine is a doctrine by Harry Truman in 1947 that any time there is a former Soviet Union, now Russian expansionism, it becomes an article of faith, a policy of the US to contain it. Now we have seen Russia being resurging power on the global ecosystem. He's not going to pull his hands and keep quiet. So this is what I mean. But a good insight into Donald Trump will be to read his book, published in 1987, which he called The Art of the Deal, which is partly biographical and partly a business advice. I think for him, if you read a book, there's also what we call brinksmanship. Brinksmanship is pushing your own system of, to the cliff, to the dangerous, as a bargaining chip. You push your own position to the cliff. I think that tends to be his own style when he wants to negotiate.
Yeah, Professor, I'll come back to you. Ambassador, you were disagreeing, I think, with the professor on some of the issues he mentioned with Ukraine.
Not really. I just wanted to point out, about the oil thing. Here is a nation that is promoting electric cars in order to do away with petrol, and of course, because of the and now have a president that is not saying no. We are going to concentrate. Look, Biden spent so much money building chips. I mean, a chip factory in, I can't remember the state now, as a result of the fact that they want to match the competition from China. Now, of course, somebody did in a conversation before, somebody was saying, how did Musk take such a statement that they are going to do this when he's hoping that he will make more money selling electric cars on the, So these are some of the contradictions you find in that speech. But again, we just wait and see, because a lot of the promises he made when he was president some 4 years ago, we actually never did not, actualize or materialize. He was going to build a wall. Canada was going to pay for it. He never even approached Canada to pay for it to start with. So here we have Donald Trump for another 4 years. And bear in mind, look, when you have another 4 years, you are more or less a lame duck. And there's very little you can do. So
I was going to say that, because now he only has 4 years left.
He only has 4 years.
I just wanted to get your thoughts as we're wrapping up on his migration policies. Do you see any sort of impact on his administration's stance, his very strong stance on migration and African diasporas in the U.S.?
If he focuses on those that have been declared illegally in the United States, there are about 1.5 million people. But because some of them were taught to have, there are two groups within that. You have the criminal elements, no doubt, like those who've committed murder and things like that. You have those whose offenses were simply that they had no driving license. And the Democrats have always wondered, will you send away somebody who has spent 10 years because of driving license? He's gotten married, he has a family, they've started building their own life in the United States. Are you going to leave the children? Are you going to separate parents from their kids? And look, if it goes that far, I can tell you that his migration policy could end up embarrassing him or become a failure because of, the public outcry that would probably bring a stop to some of them. So I expect that somewhere down the line, that the policy and the executive order he's going to sign today or tonight will probably be reformed or changed to, to take care of developing situation. As regards the African diaspora, well, I've always argued that I think his concentration is not really Africa migrants. Because how many? There are definitely not too many, come to think of it. But the main focus has been those from Latin America. And I think those are the ones that are going to suffer first before a few others on the African continent.
All right, wrapping up the conversation, Professor Jideofor, you have the floor to wrap up the conversation. Quickly, we started this conversation with Ambassador Keshi reflecting on this inauguration, how the process went and what Nigeria can learn from it. I just wanted to get your reflection on the inauguration that happened today.
Well, I think the inauguration was expected, the speeches he made, the fact that he could speak off the cuff. I think I will give him credit. I just want to make a statement on his likely immigration policy. We know he's going to tighten the immigration, and that could potentially affect the remittance inflows. For example, we do not know whether it is because of the Japa syndrome. Between January and October last year, according to the CBN data, we had a 61% increase in our remittance inflow from $2.2 billion to $4.22 billion. So if this is tightened, and assuming that the increase was as a result of the increase in Japa syndrome, in Japa, what people call Japa, then potentially we're going to see a decline, and that may also percolate in other parts of, affect the economy in other ways. Otherwise, for Trump, we simply have to wait and see.
Well, the whole world is waiting and seeing what Trump will do. Thank you so much, Ambassador Joe Keshi, former Consul-General of Nigeria in Atlanta, Georgia, and also Professor Jide for Adibe of the Department of Political Science and International Relations, Nasarawa State University. Thank you both, gentlemen, for joining me.